what is it? A joint special meeting of the City Council and Planning and Zoning Commission. Madam Chairman, do you need to call your meeting to order?
Mayor, Planning and Zoning Commission does have a quorum.
Okay.
And
So
I think is Daryl here? I think we're all here except for Daryl.
Commissioner, I believe you're correct in that I believe he's the only member of the Planning and Zoning Commission not present right now.
I know I talked to him earlier today. I know he had planned on being here at 6 o'clock, so I'm wondering if he's having problems getting into the room. I actually had a little trouble with the link myself, so
So while we're doing this, maybe one of the IT guys could reach out to him and see if there's an issue there. As far as City Council is concerned, looks like all are present with the exception of Luke Orlando and Councilmember Hernandez. If I look at this correctly. So I can certify that we have a quorum present.
And Mayor Cole, if we could also and get Commissioner Kate to go ahead and officially call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
This is a call to order of a special joint session meeting of the Planning and Zoning.
Okay, so with that, we'll move to item 4, citizens' comments. I believe there are none, if that is correct. And then item 5, new business. 1, council and commission input and discussion regarding the draft Parks and Recreation Open Spaces Master Plan. With that, I will refer to staff for their presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Cole. So for tonight's discussion, we're having this joint workshop between the City Council and the Planning and Zoning Commission to discuss the work that's been going on between the different departments of staff, working on the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Master Plan. This plan, if you'll go to the next slide, is a portion of how we plan for our future progress. So what you'll see in the next few slides of this introduction are kind of the why, the how, and the what that goes into the comprehensive planning process. On each one of these slides that are within the introduction, you'll see a source at the bottom, and that source takes you to the web page where each of these plans or strategic ideas or concepts are located. So we start off with the 3 major questions: why, how, and what do we plan for? The why on the next slide leads us with 2 core research principles: the strategic priorities and the community survey. So those are the 2 documents that lay out how we obtain citizens' comments on a broad scale through the NCS, and then how we identify each of those comments, concerns, issues into a priority that staff can address. And that's through our strategic priorities. On to the next slide. Those whys, the priorities in the community survey, lead into the overarching comprehensive plan. The last time we did a comprehensive plan was in 2015, and the link here takes you to all of the 6 chapters that are discussed. Throughout that plan and our planning process, we're looking at how we plan for the future, how we provide services to the community, how we best serve the people who we represent. On to the next slide. So our first comprehensive plan was in 1968. Of course, the last adopted plan was in 2015, and last council meeting, we just addressed the funding for our next upcoming plan, which will be in the approval in 2021 or 2022. The elements that are typically in the comprehensive plan are listed on the screen. Those are dealing with the land use, how people get around the community, what those communities look like in size and scope of neighborhoods, and then how we actually get into taking these big, bold, grand ideas and implementing them within the community. On to the next slide. So again, part of the implementation of the comprehensive plan is then taking those grand overarching ideas and putting them into workable documents. What you see on the screen is a copy of the Water Master Plan, the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, PEDC's Pearland Prosperity Plan, and of course the Thoroughfare Plan. All of those are the specialized plans for each subject matter expert in how better to serve the community. What you'll see next, presented by Interim Director of Parks, Ms. Carrie Capers, is the Parks Open Space and Master Plan in how we'll connect parts of the Thoroughfare Plan and parts of Parks and Recreation to better serve the community. And with that, I'll pass it over to Carrie. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin, for that great introduction. Good evening, Mayor Cole, City Council, and Planning and Zoning Commission. For those of you that I haven't had the opportunity to meet, I am Carrie Capers, the Interim Parks and Recreation Director. Thank you so much for the opportunity to join you this evening and present to you our Parks, Recreation, Open Spaces, and Trails Master Plan. Next slide, please. Every great city has great public spaces, and those places create value. They range from legendary commons such as Central Park in New York City to local neighborhood parks and trails. In addition to driving economic development, high quality parks set the stage for people to experience nature and community. Most of us have a favorite public park, and ideally your favorite park is close enough to home so you can enjoy it on a daily basis. On the next slide, I want to talk about why city parks are so valuable. Just as water, sewer, and public safety are considered essential public services, parks are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our community, ensuring the health of our aging community, our families, and our youth, and contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of the community. Just recently, Mitchell Silver, the Commissioner of New York Parks and Recreation, said that the value of parks after this pandemic is going to elevate. That it's not just a nice to have anymore, but now it's an essential and vital part of our civic infrastructure. Parks improve the local tax base and they increase property values anywhere from 5 to 22%. According to a study by Texas A&M professor Dr. John Crompton, it's proven that property values increase the closer that they are to a park. In addition to Parks and Recreation programs generating revenue directly from the fees that they charge, but more importantly, they provide significant indirect revenue to local economies from sports tournaments and special events. The Pearland Convention and Visitors Bureau reported that in 2 consecutive years, so just in 2018 and 2019, the TAF Winter Games of Texas that we hosted here in Pearland generated over $1.8 million in direct and indirect revenues for businesses in the area. Parks have proved also to improve water quality, to protect groundwater. They help prevent flooding. They improve the quality of the air that we breathe. They provide vegetative buffers to development, and they produce habitat for wildlife. In addition to providing places for children and families to connect and get outside and recreate together. Parks are a tangible reflection of the quality of life in a community, and they provide identity for our citizens. Parks and Recreation services are often cited as one of the most important factors in surveys of how livable communities are. Next slide, please. The Parks, Recreation, Open Spaces, and Trails Master Plan serves as the basis for our strategic planning and involves organizational and community input to identify and come to an agreement on the vision and values that support and guide our systems, our structures, and strategies as a framework for organizational progress, ultimately to achieve results for the Pearland community. It provides recommendations for provisions of facilities, programs and services, parkland acquisition and development, maintenance and operations, and administration and management. The proposed master plan is a Texas Parks and Wildlife compliant plan, which analyzes the city's system of parks and recreational program offerings to determine how the system is currently meeting the needs of its users, the citizens of Pearland, and what improvements may be required to accommodate the growth of our community 10 to 20 years down the road. As a general best practice and a requirement for certain grant awards, parks and recreation agencies are required to adopt an updated Texas Parks and Wildlife compliant master plan every 5 years. So in 2019, the city of Pearland engaged the expertise of Half Associates to help us update our expiring master plan that was created in 2015. Our project lead with Half Associates, Aaron Tooley, is also joining us this evening and will be available to help with any questions that you may have a little bit later. Next slide, please. Development of the proposed master plan benefited from a very robust public engagement program, and it reflects the diverse perspectives of our Pearland residents. The Half Associates team convened a series of listening sessions. They conducted online community surveys and hosted over 4 open houses in conjunction with this plan. Over the last several years, the city of Pearland also produced several plans and studies, some of them that Martin mentioned previously, and those were used to help support the strategies and recommendations in this plan. Some of those plans included the 2020 Strategic Plan, the Pearland Comprehensive Plan, the Old Town Site Development Plan, as well as the Lower Kirby Pearland Management District Parks and Open Spaces Master Plan, and of course the previous Parks and Recreation Master Plan. On the next slide, I've highlighted some of the results of the public engagement. Through that public engagement came several themes, and those themes were woven throughout the master plan strategies and recommendation. These themes include the distribution of parks and open spaces, recreational programming and delivery, increased pedestrian access and connectivity, enhanced operations and maintenance of our existing assets, and also an in-depth look at natural resources. The map on the next slide depicts the city's system of parks, trails, and open spaces. The National Recreation and Parks Association developed a classification system that was utilized to characterize the assets within our study. Some of the classifications that they have established include, for naming of different park assets, include pocket parks. Most of those you'll see within homeowners associations, neighborhood parks. An example of a neighborhood park in Pearland might be Hyde Park or Wood Creek Park. Our community parks within Pearland are somewhat larger, such as Independence Park or Southdown Park. They categorize a type of park as a linear park and also special use facilities. We currently don't have any of those within Pearland right now. And then regional parks. While the city doesn't own or operate any of the regional parks, it's important to note that there are 4 very large regional parks just outside the city of Pearland, outside the city limits of Pearland. One of those is Resoft Park in Alvin, Adair Park, Tom Bass Park, and also El Franco Lee. Those regional parks were included in our inventory of parks because they are easily accessible by our residents, and it was important that we showed their amenities as well. The city of Pearland owns and operates a total of 26 parks and facilities that exceed 546 acres. A summary of our inventory of city parks by classification and other major recreational amenities is included in Chapter 4 of this plan. The city's park system is also supported by approximately 1,417 acres of subdivision and homeowner association or HOA parks, facilities, golf courses, and trails. So moving on to the next slide, one of the themes that came up during the public engagement process was Parkland Distribution. Parkland and recreational facilities should be conveniently and safely accessible to all of our residents. According to the standards set by the National Recreation and Parks Association, they should be within a 10-minute walking distance of all of our residents. So on this map, we took a look at the distance that it would take to access each one of our parks. A 1/4 mile walk shed was used for all HOA parks, and that's shown on this map in purple. And then we looked at a 1/4 mile and a 1/2 mile walk shed and delineated those in green around all of the city-owned and operated parks. The analysis of this park service area shows that on this map, that it illustrates while most residents are within 1/2 mile of, or a 10-minute walk of an HOA or a city-owned park, there are still a few areas in South Central Pearland that don't enjoy this convenience. The next slide includes some demographic analysis. Demographic analysis also provides us with an initial understanding of the needs of Pearland residents for parks and recreation facilities and services. Demographic projections, utilizing a variety of relevant data sources, estimate a population of around 167,000 residents by the year 2040, with the majority of our growth occurring in the Shadow Creek area on the west end of Pearland, as well as South Central Pearland. It's also important to analyze the generational composition of the community to make sure that parks and recreation facilities are accommodating the needs of multiple generations. Next slide, please. As the population continues to grow in Pearland, we will continue to see an increased demand for our parks and open spaces, for our trails and sidewalks, recreational programs, things like sports fields and athletic facilities, as well as additional parks and recreation department staff. The proposed plan provides research, assessment, and strategic planning to address all of those needs. Next slide, please. The Parks, Recreation, Open Spaces, and Trails Master Plan is subdivided into three separate volumes, and includes 5 principal sections. The first volume provides the introduction. It provides a summary of the plan elements and is meant to provide additional clarity to the processes of formulating the master plan and fulfillment of the themes mentioned previously. Chapter 2, Pearland Parks Tomorrow, provides recommended strategies and actions for addressing administration, operations, and maintenance issues, and the needs highlighted in other chapters, including improvements to existing parks, park distribution, trail connections, indoor recreation and aquatics, and also natural resources. Chapter 3 of the plan provides us with an implementation action plan regarding the priorities of strategies and recommendations. The plan specifies the types of actions warranted, whether the action requires modifications to existing or the creation of new policies and programs, the city's departments or organizations that may be required to contribute to the specific action, and the order of magnitude cost associated with the strategies and actions. The second volume includes chapters 4 and 5, and these are the supporting documents that help to develop the first volume with the Pearland Parks Tomorrow and the strategic plan. The volume 2 in the plan's 4th chapter, Pearland Parks Today, provides us with a snapshot of existing conditions with respect to the distribution of Parks and Recreation Department administered assets. So utilizing the National Recreation and Parks Association's park classification system, parks are identified and categorized based on type, recreational assets are summarized, and facilities are inventoried. Chapter 5, the needs assessment, provides a demand-based assessment based on resident and stakeholder input to determine actual and anticipated park system usage. A standards-based assessment with regards to level of service, and an operational-based assessment to determine the budgetary, operating, and maintenance needs of the Parks and Recreation Department to provide an optimal mix of facilities and services to the community. And finally, a condition-based assessment that identifies the needs for improvement to city-owned parks and facilities. On the next slide, we get into looking at Chapter 2 and the components of Chapter 2. In Chapter 2, the plan lays out the recommended actions that the City of Pearland can take to address the needs in our park system as described in the needs assessment in Chapter 5. Each action is tied to very specific goals, objectives, and strategies that will address the community's needs, as well as develop and improve parkland, recreational facilities, and programs in Pearland. This master plan lays out 5 goals, 12 objectives, 67 strategies, and over 200 recommendations. The goals identified in the plan include providing an equitable distribution of parks and facilities throughout the city that serve the recreational needs of a diverse community, providing a diverse and equitable range of recreational programs and activities for everyone, ensuring that as Pearland grows, we're growing in harmony with the environment, and also ensuring that we are fiscally sustainable and resilient. The next slide, in the master plan, I mentioned that the plan includes 67 strategies. The Parks Recreation Beautification Board, HAF Associates, and Pearland City staff have worked together to develop a list of the top 20 strategies. So on this slide and the next slide, you'll see each of those top 20 strategies. For sake of time, I'm not going to go through every strategy in detail, but I did want to provide you with a list of the top 20 strategies in this presentation for your reference. What I would like to focus on is showing you how we connect all of the goals and the objectives and how that connects with each of the strategy. So on the next slide, there's an example. I've provided a couple of examples to take a look at tonight. Of the initiatives and actions for a strategy, what they look like in the plan. So underneath the objective set out in the plan, Pearland's parks are operated and maintained to a uniform level of quality and condition. Strategy 1.3.5 suggests implementing the remedial recommendations identified within the park conditions assessment found in Appendix E. The initiatives are broken down by location and include things like a recommended timeline for replacing playgrounds or refurbishing a splash pad, conducting general maintenance items like painting or restaking trees. The master plan utilized the NRPA scoring system to help establish our park conditions. And out of a scoring system of 1 through 4, 1 being the best and 4 being the worst, we scored a 1.3. So our parks are in very good condition, but it's very important, and this objective is a top priority, to making sure that we have that uniform level of quality and condition, and that we have very tangible actions that we can take to help make sure that we're maintaining our assets that already exist within Pearland at that consistent level of quality for our residents. The next slide is strategy 1.3.6. One of the objectives was to provide a variety of outdoor environments for the use and enjoyment of Pearland residents. So we have in this strategy a conceptual design for Hunter Park that could be incorporated into the city's capital improvement plan. It is envisioned that Hunter Park will function as predominantly as a passive recreational park and would include things like a rain garden, educational components, a walking path, site amenities such as benches, pavilions, grills, and possibly even a small playground. The next slide, strategy 3.2.2, is addressing the objective to increase accessibility to Pearland's network of recreational trails. So making sure that we can provide that accessibility to what already exists. We have some really incredible trail amenities. Now we just need to get people there. So the plan looks at several different types of trailheads, prioritizes those, provides us with some cost estimates as it relates to those, and gives us that direction that we need to help provide that access to our trail systems. The next slide jumps into or provides you with an example of an implementation action table included in Chapter 3. The purpose of Chapter 3, the strategic plan, is to provide that realistic, prioritized implementation program that aligns with our vision and reflects the outcomes of the analysis provided in Chapter 2, Pearland Parks Tomorrow. It provides an implementation action plan regarding the prioritization of our master plan strategies and the recommendations. The implementation action plan categorizes those recommendations in terms of short, mid, and long-term strategies. It specifies the type of actions warranted, including the need for capital funding, modification to existing policies, programs, or regulations. It identifies possible partnerships and coordination with other city departments or agencies. It talks about it includes whether additional planning or design needs to happen. It identifies an action leader for each objective and strategy, and it provides cost estimates for each one of those as well. So you may be asking what's next, or you may be thinking what's next. So on the next slide, I've highlighted a couple of our next steps in this process. So once the plan is adopted, we're going to be setting up a strategic planning retreat with a variety of different staff and different departments throughout the city. And we're going to present to them volume 1. We're going to take the top 20 strategies. We're going to make sure that everything that the action needed according to those strategies. We're going to review all of those with everyone, and we're going to take a look at, capital projects. Do we need more targeted planning? What partnerships and agencies and coordination needs to happen? And then we're going to work together to formulate detailed action plans, such as programming schedule and budgets for implementing key strategies involving capital projects and anything, definitely incorporating anything into the CIP. We're going to evaluate the strategies in light of our CAPRA accreditation requirements, and we'll begin to formulate how implementation progress will be reported to our CAPRA accreditation agency. We'll start working to identify alternate funding opportunities, such as grants or fundraising strategies in conjunction with the Forever Parks Foundation of Pearland. In the appendices of this plan, there's one section dedicated to different alternate funding opportunities. So we'll be taking advantage of all of those resources and looking at, with these strategies, how can we make them happen sooner than later. And finally, we will commence with site conditions assessment for the proposed trailheads. We'll confirm programmatic improvements and planning level cost estimates. So with that, that concludes my presentation this evening. I would like to turn it back over to any of the city managers if you have anything else you want to close out, or open it up to all of you for any questions.
Nice job, Carrie. Mayor, I just want to thank you for the joint groups here. This is obviously an important document and one that we refer to and will be using relentlessly, but welcome any feedback and comments and questions. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you for that, both Carrie as well as planning staff, putting that into context of the overall comprehensive plan. Before we get to the council for questions and comments, I'd like to actually open it up first to our planning and zoning members, since they are here. So Madam Chair, would you open that up with your members?
Thank you, Mayor Cole. Commissioner Earls, do you have any questions or comments?
Thank you. My one question was, you mentioned there were long-term plans. Does it have an expiration date that they have to be executed by?
So what we look at with this plan, no, to answer your question, no, there is not an expiration date. The plan in itself is a 5-year plan, but we are forecasting out to try to identify the needs of Pearland 10 and 20 years down the road. While we won't accomplish all of those within the first 5 years, each year we'll review and update our plan and the strategic priorities as it relates to the plan, and keep moving forward with those items. Some of the items as well are recommendations. As the community grows, we'll take a look at the possibility of incorporating some of those.
Thank you. That was all. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Commissioner Boswell?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good evening. Thank you, Ms. Capers, once again for the detailed explanation of how we'll be moving forward with the parks and recreation space. I do appreciate the information we received. I guess one question I have is, how were the different parks deemed and importance of which ones you'll begin with concerning this master plan?
So as far as the recommended strategies within the plan, we did work with the Parks, Recreation, and Beautification Board, as well as the consultant. The consultant provided expertise in industry standards and trends and what's happening across in our area as well as across the country. And so that was included in prioritizing those top 20 strategies. When you look at the conditions assessment, that will be part of our next steps. We have the HAF associates completed a full audit of every one of our parks, and then provided us with all of the details for each one of those parks. So one of the next steps in the process will be to take and break all of those down, determine what we can address in the very near future, and what things will require some additional budget requirements to make those happen.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Dansby, you have questions or comments?
I just want to say thank you to staff and everyone for the hard work. I know when I was on PDC that, this was a key piece of our strategic plan there. I know that Parks and Rec is an amenity that is highly ranked, probably in the top 5 for desirable areas of our city or of any city when people either want to move or reluctantly have to move out of a city. They want to move somewhere that is equivalent or better with their parks and recs with children, the ability to exercise with COVID world being what it is, being outside, stretching your legs is key to being stay healthy as much as possible. And I appreciate all the hard work. I do look forward to the opportunity for some grants, grant programs, and grant opportunities to assist in these expenses, because I think that the gripe is always, everybody wants it, but nobody wants to pay for it. So, anything that we can soften that blow to the taxpayers is key as well. So, again, I appreciate all the hard work of all the committees and the city council and all the members that have provided input along the way. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Eisenberg. I don't think we checked your sound.
I'm on. I got it.
I hear you.
All right. The only thing I wanted to ask was, are we still being funded by federal government when it comes to the trails? Are they still meeting the lion's share of the cost on those?
For some of the trail projects that we are currently working on, yes, that is correct.
Okay. That's all I've got then.
Thank you. Commissioner Fuertes, how about you? Questions or comments?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. A concern that I have and I have had for a long time with the parks is the accessibility thereof. I know you mentioned it, and I'm going to mention one of them. Mr. Upton has already informed me of the reasoning and somewhat a solution, but the park there on Pearland Parkway, I know it's a new park. It's to connect to the trailhead or for people to park cars. I believe only 3 or 4 or 5 cars can get in there. I understand that the city was limited in the land. It's just a shame that it's such a wonderful walking park. My daughter uses it. She talks about it all the time to me because I'm an avid walker. But when I say, well, I'll meet you out there, well, that's 2 cars out of 3, so, let's figure something else out. We go somewhere else. So I'd love to see something happen. And I'd love to talk to you offline because I have an idea with the landowners, I believe next door, but I'll fish that out and then circle back to you, Ms. Capers. The second thing I noticed, I've said it before, again, I was on the P&Z 5 years ago, and I mentioned it, and maybe there's reasons why we can't utilize it, but it seems like there's a couple of really good walking, oversized detention areas off of Magnolia, on the south side of Magnolia, west of, I believe that's Harkey. So east of Harkey, we already have the Pearland, Keep Pearland Beautiful site, the recycling center, and they have a walking path around that. I'll call it a mini lake. It'd just be nice to put a couple more over, on the other side, and if we can claim it as park space, so be it. Some of those are pretty darn natural from a plant growth and biosphere, what we have there. Lastly, and I don't know how the city feels about this. The city staff, I'm sure, has the regulations for it, but I've always promoted wet detention ponds in new developments. And I believe before I left, we were starting to consider the wet bottom detentions that had a walking trail around them as an amenity, and therefore it could be calculated as credit for open space. I haven't followed up on that. It's been on my mind. I'll talk to Martin, or if he wants to chime in. But I think that's another way to get people out. My community has a really small park. Nobody goes to it. Kids every once in a while, the little pocket park style. But there are walkers every night or every morning when I walk. I'm saying hello to maybe 10, 12 different people. So I appreciate what you said. 10 minutes of walking is a rule, or a rule of thumb. I think you can get about half a mile in there. So I can walk to a park and walk around the park, or I can just stay in my own neighborhood and circle around. But some of those styles, I know it's all about the kids and bringing the kids, into a park. But for some of us older people, and I'm speaking as an older person now, unfortunately, some of the walking stuff means a lot to me. So thank you very much for the presentation.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. I appreciate all of your feedback, and I will agree with you that park programming is, it's for everyone, not just the kids. We love the kids, and that's very important. But we want to get everybody out to our parks, and access is very important. And we are getting very creative with some of the things that we do, and have some creative resources to help with some of the things that you mentioned, and also this master plan addresses the need that as Pearland grows and we continue to build Pearland, that we're taking our natural resources into account and making sure that we're maintaining that natural resource environment for the community. So I appreciate that and would welcome future conversations with you about your thoughts.
Carrie, as we move to the to City Council and their questions and comments, I had a couple of, well, first off, thanks for the presentation. I'm not sure if anyone from Half and Associates is on line as well, but a quick, I guess, a comment. Typically, amenities, parks, trails, as Henry mentioned, turning a detention pond into an amenity in a neighborhood, that does drive value. And you started off the presentation with the economic development side and the value add that trails and the like add to the community. And I'm not sure if it would be interesting to know if HAF has some way to quantify value by a certain park or a certain project. Just be interesting to know if they have that ability to, how accurate it is, that type of thing. Because clearly it goes to desirability, which obviously people want to live, and their property values go up if their city, their subdivision, if their area of town is more desirable than somewhere else to be. That obviously drives value. So it'd be interesting to know if there's a way to quantify this master plan, for example, and what that would mean in value add.
That is a great question. And yes, we do have representation from Half Associates here. Josh, is Aaron on the line?
Yes, I just unmuted him. Yes, thank you very much. Excellent question, Mayor Cole. Again, my name's Aaron Tooley. I'm the Director of Planning with Half Associates. But just to answer your immediate question, Carrie had mentioned early on in the presentation that Dr. John Crompton, who is a professor with Texas A&M University, he has conducted extensive studies throughout Texas and elsewhere regarding the proximities of residential development to parks and open space and trails. And as Carrie was mentioning, there is quantifiable proof, defensible proof that The closer one lives to a park or open space, there is a significant increase in value to the property and home within a residential community, for example. And just to answer a couple of other quick questions that the Commissioner Fuertes and you're also bringing up. When it comes to wet detention basins and recreational trails around detention basins, that was something that we definitely have in more than one action and strategy throughout the plan, is the importance of really utilizing all of those open space amenities, particularly your drainage corridors for additional recreational trails, but for habitat improvement, particularly those detention ponds down on Magnolia. That was one key place where we thought a trailhead was warranted, as well as additional recreational trails around there. So trying to take full advantage of all of your open space, further amenitizing your open space with additional revegetation of your forest canopy, just so people can walk comfortably along your trails as well as in your open space areas. All of those are very important considerations.
Thank you.
And before we actually, I need to go back and pick up another member of our Planning and Zoning Commission. Commissioner Hendricks, did you have an additional question or comment?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. And excuse me for not actually knowing this, but I'm not sure that Pearland has a park that is designed for people with disabilities that are in wheelchairs. I'm not sure if we do. Is that in our plan?
So right now, the playground that was installed at Independence Park is an accessible playground. So individuals in a wheelchair can access that park. But we are currently working with the Forever Parks Foundation to build Pearland's first inclusive playground, which is, I think, more in lines of what you are looking for. And that the location of that playground will be at the sports complex at Shadow Creek Ranch.
Okay, and then one more thing. I have kids that play sports in this community, and I have one that's played soccer his whole life here. And one of the things that I noticed is that we always had to go to El Franco Lee Park to play soccer, to play tournaments. And I remember there being disputes between two soccer clubs because one soccer club could never use the park in Pearland. However, we had a lot of kids on this team that were from Pearland and other teammates. And I always thought that was kind of weird that we were restricted from using that's the park, the newer soccer field that has it's more or less like an overflow detention. But I was thinking that if it was usable by other organizations, especially that organization that uses, and I know they have El Franco Lee, but let's say another Pearland organization wanted to form and they had a tournament, that could be possible money. I don't know how tournaments work, but I would assume that the city or county would get some of that money from the tournament. I think that it should be looked at as to the restrictions of use of some of the facilities.
Yeah. Yes, thank you for that. In the master plan, there are recommendations for potential construction of additional soccer fields. We are always looking at opportunities for more multi-purpose fields or ways to get more players on all of our fields. Currently, right now, the sports complex, Hickory Slough Sports Complex, we provide priority use to our registered sports association. That doesn't prohibit use from other organizations. We work closely with that organization to determine their schedules and when they will be on the field. And then we, as Parks and Recreation Department, can go in and schedule additional tournaments and additional field usage by other organizations. So if that's something that you're interested in, please, or you still have that need, please reach out to me and I will connect with our athletics division to take a look at what some of that availability is on that field, and we'll do our best to meet your needs for sure.
Thank you so much.
All right, Chairman Cade, does that complete comments from Planning and Zoning? And what about yourself?
It does. My comment or my question actually was answered already throughout this, and I just want to tell Ms. Capers thank you. for everything. And Parks does a wonderful job. And you mentioned Wood Creek Park, and that one's near and dear to me. And I thank y'all for everything you've done there. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. So with that, I'm going to move on to members of council. You've got something to add or comments, please chime in.
Yeah, this is Councilman Little. I just have one quick question and one observation. I noticed if you are compliant with the Texas Department of Wildlife Parks, you are eligible to receive funding. Historically, how much funding have we received just on average from the state on an annual basis?
So on average, over the last 8 years, we've brought in approximately $300,000 for construction of trails, and those included the Independence Park phase, not Independence Park, I'm sorry, the trail connectivity phase 2, the section that connected the Centennial Park to Magnolia, and also the JHEC trails. I can provide you with some more specific numbers, but off the top of my head, I think we're roughly at 300,000.
Okay, so more than a drop in the bucket anyway. My observation on your figure 1.4, where you've got the graph showing the population, the actual growth from 2000 to 2018, and then the projection for the next 20 years. It says on the middle of the right that Pearland's population grew by 29% between 2000 and 2018. That number is just way off. The population almost tripled, so a lot more than 29%. So you might, if you're going to use this presentation going forward, you might want to correct that.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Little. I will take a look at that, and we'll make sure that those numbers are correct and accurate.
Figure 1.4. Okay, that's all I have, Mayor.
I'll go ahead and go. Yeah, to speak to Ms. Heinrich, soccer fields have been an issue over the years. A lot of people have said, we need more soccer fields. We need more soccer fields, and no matter how many we put in, it seems like it's not enough. So I don't know where the right number is that, we get to the point where we have enough soccer fields for everybody that's trying to get on those soccer fields. But I have a couple other questions. Is there a calculation that's done by the consultant on how many restrooms we need for a park based upon the amenities that are there? I know we build a lot of baseball fields and softball fields, and when we do that, we tend to have tournaments, which is a great thing. But a lot of times when we have these tournaments, the restroom facilities are not adequate for the amount of people that show up for these tournaments. Even though we provide, the porta potties or whatever, I was just wondering if there's some kind of calculation that's done or could be done based upon how many like softball fields or baseball fields we have that could maybe help the restroom situations that we have. The other thing is that when we actually got started with the Shadow Creek Park, the Shadow Creek Ranch Park, we had a lot of people come to us and say, "Hey, how come we don't have tennis courts?" And that was never in the plan, is to have tennis courts over there. So I don't know if there's something that can be done. Like I know we do this plan every 5 years, but is there something that we can do like a mini questionnaire or polling in between that 5 years, like maybe every 2.5 years or something to see what the population is wanting at that time period. Because I mean, by the time we come up with the plan and we get funded for the plan and we actually spend the money and start breaking ground, it could be 3 to 5 years later, and those kids or people that were going to use that park or facility may not even live here anymore, or the kids are grown up and gone, gone off to college or whatever. So I didn't know if there was something that we could do maybe like midterm to try to get some polling on, are we still on the right track, or do we need to maybe, look at something else in the near term? My other thing is the hike and bike trails. I know we've done massive amounts of concrete sidewalks for trails, but in Shadow Creek Ranch Park, some of that stuff is just crushed granite opposed to concrete. And I don't know if it's beneficial that we have some of those trails to be that crushed concrete, kind of more of a nature type kind of hiking trail versus a concrete, walking trail or whatever. But I know that would be probably less expensive, and also be an added value to our park trails that we have, where it's kind of going through. I know the new piece that we added over off of Independence, or I'm sorry, not Independence Park, but Centennial Park, that is on the east side of Veterans. That is way kind of out of the way, and it's a great walk. Don't get me wrong. I love that trail, but that would have been something that I thought maybe could have been more of a crushed granite type trail, more of a hiking type trail versus, a concrete walking type trail. So those are just some thoughts that I had.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the feedback. I will tell you that we work closely with our architects as we're designing each one of our park facilities, most specifically the athletic facilities, and they do have formulas that calculate number of parking spaces and number of restrooms, and then we take that and we work within the constraints and the budgets that we have for each one of those projects to make sure that we can fulfill as many of those amenities as possible. And then for some of the facilities that you may be referring to, we are continually working to provide to identify options and ways that we can fulfill more of the restroom needs for some of those larger events. There's currently, a good balance between our everyday use of the facilities and some of those larger tournaments, and in the interim, just bringing in those temporary restroom facilities to help until we can install something a little bit more permanent. But that is a great observation, and I thank you for bringing that up. The master plan we review every year and look at the needs of the community to make sure that they're still aligning with the recommendations in those plans. And then that is, a 5-year review requirement for grant funding and our CAPRA accreditation. All of the things that you mentioned is why that is so important, to make sure that, if we're planning right now, we're developing a plan looking out 20 years down the road. In 5 years, our community is going to look very different. And so making sure that we provide those regular updates to the plan. And I've made a special note to look at tennis courts in the master plan. In the park assessment, they've provided, when they did the audit, we have a list of all of the facilities that not just that the city of Pearland owns and operates, but also we looked at the school district's facilities and all of the HOA facilities and how those meet the needs. And we've pulled the standards from the National Recreation and Parks Association, and they provide recommendations for communities our size and how many tennis courts we should have and how many soccer fields we should have. And then we took those recommendations and we've even compared them to some of our benchmark cities. So that is addressed, tennis specifically is addressed in the plan as well. So that'll be something that we'll take a close look at. And I hear your recommendations for those hike and bike trails. I know accessibility is one of the, the guidelines that have played into the picture of the concrete trails versus the crushed granite. And I can be happy to provide you with some more information about why certain surfaces are selected in different locations. But I did make note of your comments for that, so thank you.
As we move on, I did want to let the public know, Councilmember Hernandez did join us. I'm not sure what time you joined in. Obviously, when we called for the quorum, you weren't available, but I'll throw this open to you if you have any comments.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I do. I think I joined at 6:11, if I recall. So I wanted to touch first, Carrie. This is a great start, I think, for the master plan, kind of getting all this stuff before the public and council to have this dialogue. It's really great. So thanks for all of your hard work. And I think HAF also did a pretty bang up job. I was at a couple of their public meetings and some of the forums that they had, and I think they really tried to take the public's input and turn it into something usable. So as far as 1.1.6 and 4.1.4, those were particularly exciting to me. I had a couple questions about those. With regard to trying to identify and preserve any forested or ecologically sensitive tracts of land left in the city, have we reached out to any other organizations or land trusts in helping to identify and manage those areas, or even provide tax incentives or any other types of incentives? Because I've seen this modeling work in other regions where some of the trusts are able to work with the cities directly. Has that been something that we've considered?
We have had conversations as it relates to that, and are working to develop some policies that will help provide some additional resources moving into the future. So conversations, yes, enough, enough to share with you at this point. I don't have any specifics, but that is coming very soon.
Okay, awesome. And then this is just something you had mentioned earlier whenever you were going over the parks, and you had mentioned that we currently don't manage any regional parks. And this is just a hypothetical. If there were another entity that were willing to develop a regional park or even turn over an existing regional park to the city of Pearland, is this something that Parks Department could add to their portfolio and manage the demand of a regional park or regional facility? Is there some way to identify like the impact share of a regional park if it were located in or managed by the city of Pearland? I know that's kind of a weird question, but
I think we would have to take a look at what that property entails, what it includes, and then the availability or the opportunity to provide, all the operational and maintenance needs to support that park. So if the benefits, there were benefits to the community that supported the additional investment into operations and maintenance, I think that would be something that the city could consider. But
yeah, I think it would be worth at least coming up with some type of some guidelines or a framework to see what that impact would need to be if we were to go down that road potentially. I think that's something where we could get some assistance from other entities. And I know you mentioned some other organizations like, the drainage districts things, the different counties. So potentially identifying those areas and finding out what those, triggers would be to have the city involved in the ongoing maintenance of something like that, if we were to get to that point in the future. Because I didn't see those types of things in there, but I think it'd be a good conversation. And then I had one final thing. I saw in several of the parks that were listed that you had add waste and recycling receptacles. But I know that this was previously the case. I don't know if this is still the case, but I know that the receptacles at the parks had an extremely high contamination rate. So I didn't see anything in the master plan about adding additional education if we are to add additional recycling receptacles at the parks. So I wanted to at least get that into the conversation as well, and to see also, in addition to adding education on site at the parks to help drive down the contamination rate, even if we could build something like that into our RSAs, I think would assist as well. So those are all the comments that I had, Mayor. I appreciate it.
Great. I'm going to move on. We'll do Councilmember Carbone, then Perez, and then Owens, and that should round us out.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. In reviewing everything, I guess, first of all, great plan, and it's always neat to see how these roll up into the comprehensive plan. Kind of the piece I found missing, I didn't see and couldn't find the links out to the appendices, specifically H, and the others that dig into costs. What I love about these plans is everything's a great idea, and we want everything until we start looking at price tags. And so I guess as we move forward, especially starting to prioritize, I think the top 20 for the next steps, let's start putting some price tags next to them. And I mean, Councilman Hernandez brought up a good point. If I'm all for recycling, we do a ton of it, but if the parks have the highest contamination rate, we're going to spend more money for recycle bins and then have to educate more for parks I mean, at some point, the cost benefit isn't there. Let's go plant trees or do something somewhere else for recycling. But just, I don't know. Just, I don't want to blindly go after that if there's data that shows we shouldn't be chasing our tail in that regard. And then on table 3.1, there's some action leaders, and just if you look at that, some of those abbreviations don't follow with a key up at the top. So if we can just confirm that's good before we finalize the draft. And I think that's it. And so, I mean, overall, great job. I look forward to seeing the details and the dollar figures behind it all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Perez?
Thank you, Mayor. Few things, just maybe dovetailing previous conversations I've had into this master plan. First, we've heard for years all from the biking community, pardon me, about trying to better integrate our street design and our signage with the biking community. Obviously, that falls under the auspices of Parks and Rec and engineering. I think I'd like to see that part of our master plan. I've been speaking with the members of the biking community for a while now, more frequently over the last few months. They're confident that Pearland is the type of community where they could bring on big biking events that obviously aren't completely contained within our city limits, but maybe starting into here. So they've had some ideas. I know I passed those along, but I'd like to see maybe if we can get something like that integrated, find some corridors where we think that we could have some successful biking trails either along or as part of the existing right-of-way, and add signage, and maybe have a better inventory of that as part of this plan. The other thing, I know it's more of a capital project, but just to further iterate that, I think Independence Park Phase 2, getting that project moving is an important cog to this overall master plan. It's very clearly and obviously only halfway done when you're out there. It's a beautiful park, what we've had done, but I think the current plan to try and put that into either put in a 2024 bond referendum is much needed. We really need to get that part completed. And again, continuing to push that through this master plan, I think is necessary and beneficial. I think everybody's got great comments. I think the trouble with parks is there's no matter what we do, we've spent too much and not done enough. There appears to be never a Goldilocks scenario with parks in the community. Every time we spend money in a park, we're going to get plenty of people who tell us that why are we spending money on this? It's a waste of taxpayer dollars. And we're going to get plenty of people who tell us that we've not done enough. Why didn't we include some sports amenity or some additional bathrooms, more hike and bike trails, pretty much the gambit. We hear about it every time we do a project. So this is an important document, but it's easily criticized because there is no, at least as well as I'm aware, there's no exact calculation of what a perfect amount of park is. And there's no true measurement that I'm aware of that says this is our goal. So, I struggle to criticize what we're doing. I think what's important is that we generate a plan and push forward with it. And I think this is a great start. It's always going to be a working document, but us as council members and us as planning and our planning commission, it's important that we look at it, we buy off on it, except that there's always going to be imperfection. But if there's something else that we'd like to add, we continue to treat it as a living document and move forward with, whatever modifications we want. We've heard from people who want more cricket fields. We've heard from people who want us to have a high-end disc golf course, far more expansive than what we currently have. We've heard about skate parks, bike parks, all that stuff. I think we'd love to have all of that, but it's just hard to predict what it is that we're going to use. For example, I'd say I was a big proponent of the skate parks going on probably 10 years ago. until I went out to Alvin and saw how their skate park is used and who's using it and what they do tend to do around it. And now I don't want skate parks anywhere near Pearland. So it's tough. I mean, this is a tough thing for us to. It's an imperfectible document, and you know, I'm very appreciative of all the effort that staff has put in. Maybe a couple of ideas in response to some of the thoughts that were brought up. I think Member Moore is correct about trying to find low-cost opportunity when it comes to the trails. I'm not a big fan of the loose gravel systems like decomposed granite or any of the other systems. They tend to get replaced pretty quickly. A lot of the schools that I consult for, one of the things they commonly do is replace those systems with concrete because it's cheap to build initially, but it becomes a perpetual maintenance headache. Keeping the granite in is tough. Having to constantly go out there and regrade it is tough, and it's not really great for our handicapped community if they want to use the trails. I would kind of encourage us to try and put concrete where we can, but we can certainly continue to have that conversation. I think the wet bottom ponds, if we can get them in wherever we can, I think it'd be great. It's just hard to force it into force developers to do it because they're costly. Not only they tend to eat up a little bit more land. They're a lot more to maintain. There's a lot more excavation for us to put those in because you've got to make them at least 6 foot deep for them to even be useful. But I do think, to the mayor's point, they are great amenities, and I think that we need to probably be more aggressive with regional detention facilities and make those large amenity ponds. Either large amenity ponds or dual use ponds where we're getting a sports facility at them, similar to what we've done over at Hickory Slough. So there's a lot we can do with detention facilities where we can make improvements to our drainage system, but also get some kind of dual use amenity. And I think, you know, maybe continuing to expand and look at that is a useful tool for this document. One thing I would add is I don't know what's going to happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen post 2020, but I would probably imagine that the volume of people who are going to be working from home is going to end up increasing after everything settles. You know, at least talking with those friends and family of mine that are working from home, sometimes they just get stir crazy and want to get out. You know, maybe it's possible we could expand or incorporate a Wi-Fi network to our parks to give those who are working from home and just need a break and say, look, I can't be in this house any longer, or I'm going to go stir crazy, or you know, I just need to get out for a little bit and not have to go clog up like a Starbucks or any of the or Pearland Coffee Roasters, any of those facilities that just don't have the room for people to work there for long periods of time. Maybe we can give them an option at the park, put some Wi-Fi connectivity out there and let them work a little bit when on a nice sunny day. I think that could add a lot of value to our community, and I think it would get utilized a lot and drive more people to our parks. I think that's it. I mean, obviously, we could use more parking at all of the bike and bike trails. That's probably a problem we'll never solve, but we should try and get more where we can. And like I said, it's an impossible document to perfect, but I think as long as we're progressing and listening, we're going to be doing the right thing. So thanks to staff for all that they put together.
Good comments. We'll move on to Councilmember Owens.
Yes, sir. Gary, you know, I guess it was last year when we had the tree lighting and everything out there. There were so many comments going on about how great, you know, the park looked and everybody had done such a tremendous job, and I think that's a great thing. The only negative thing that I heard is that they wanted to know where the benches and the barbecue pits were. And so that's one of the things they had mentioned, that you know, they would like to have those back like they used to be, where they could go out and grill hamburgers or hot dogs or something, have kids out there playing and have tables and stuff. We used to have them on the outside perimeter of it. And so, I don't know if there's any plans to bring any of those in and place them in there. One of the things I looked at, if you go walking on the trail over there that had been mentioned, which there's not a lot of parking places over there. But when you go under Hughes Road and look over to the left of the treatment plant, you'll see about 6 or 8 concrete picnic tables out there. And that used to be where the city had their picnics at. Those look like it. They're still in good shape and could be used to sit over there. And we wouldn't have to really worry about people destroying them and what have you, because they lasted a number of years. I don't know, Mayor Cole, when he was there before I was, if that's where they had the picnic at over there, but I know that the tables are still there over there on that. So I didn't know if we were going to go ahead and replace those over there. And others were talking about, being able to fish in that little lake there. And I know we stocked it and everything, but they were wanting to see about, when kids are going to be able to go over there and maybe park close to it or what have you, in order to go over there and go fishing. So those are the two. I could complain about the trees. I saw a lot of statements in the plan about the trees and how much, they contribute back for the pollution and soil erosion and oxygen, and that's good. No doubt about it. And I know this probably don't have anything to do with you, but we're missing on Pearland Parkway. We're missing 41 trees over there. And I know we're known as a tree city, but for some reason they're dying over there, and the others, they get drunk on the weekend and have wrecks or something on there, but they never get replaced. And that's what's missing over there now, the way that we staggered it out. There's 41 trees missing. But I think Parks Department is doing a really good job. And it's good to see the information that's in this master plan today. And I appreciate all the hard work that went into to putting that together. That's all I have, Mayor.
All right. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and move us towards adjournment. But before I do, this was just an input session. Obviously, nothing for either body to vote on. But if you've got additional comments or questions, I'm sure both Carrie and Clay can take those by email and would welcome those. If you can send those up. And before I finish, Carrie and/or Clay, do you have anything else to add?
Thank you. I appreciate all of the wonderful comments and feedback. Made lots of good notes, and we'll make sure that moving forward and as we bring this back to you in January, that we will address each one of your comments moving forward. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right. So with that, let's go ahead and we're going to adjourn our meeting. As far as council is concerned, you'll exit out of this. I believe I was told Planning and Zoning will stay in this meeting for their regular meeting and move right into that. So council, you'll exit out and go to your 6:30 meeting.